During this presentation, you will be introduced to the following topics. First, a theoretical background. What is the theory behind this pedagogical philosophy of differentiation? Next, traits of differentiated instruction. What are the core characteristics of this philosophical approach? Next, why differentiate? Why does this philosophical approach promote learning? Teacher's role. What part do you, as the teacher, play in a differentiated classroom? And finally, multiple intelligences and Bloom's taxonomy. How do these theoretical ideas tie into the differentiated classroom? Carol Ann Tomlinson has conducted extensive research, written numerous articles, and published several books on the topic of differentiated instruction. While she is not the only person who has written on the topic, she is considered the leader of this movement. Rather than me telling you all about her, I suggest you conduct some research on your own about her ideas. Furthermore, I have provided you with a few links to Dr. Tomlinson's interviews. These links can be found on our class webpage. So please, take some time this semester to review this particular content. I find it very engaging, and I feel that it will help you to gain a deeper perspective of differentiated instruction. Differentiated instruction is not a set of activities. Rather, it's a philosophical approach that is designed to meet the diverse needs of learners of any classroom setting. At the outset, it is key to realize that all gifted kids are not alike. So no matter your classroom setting, general classroom with mixed ability grouping or pull-out program with a homogeneous grouping, you will have a diverse set of learners. Differentiated instruction is a way of thinking about and organizing teaching and learning. It is not a new idea or instructional strategy. By following this approach, you are allowing all students to be exposed to key concepts, but at differing levels of complexity and depth. One myth associated with differentiated instruction is that it is individualized instruction with a separate lesson plan for each student. This is false. What you are doing is creating a learning environment that allows students to engage with content at their individual learning levels. To make this happen, it requires the teacher to conduct ongoing assessment and adjust your instruction accordingly. In other words, conducting formative assessments. While summative assessments are part of this approach, like any good teaching, it is not the driving force. In the differentiated classroom, learning is organized around key concepts, themes, and common elements. You must encourage and allow for multiple approaches to content, process, and product design. It is not a one-size-fits-all instructional approach. Now, if implemented successfully, you will be engaging all students in challenging tasks that allow for flexible grouping. You will know you are implementing it incorrectly if you are watering down a task for some students while giving others more work to do. Educators, we know that kids are unique, and each of them have unique ways of engaging with the classroom environment. Unfortunately, we do not always create learning environments that allow for students to be unique learners. However, even though they are all unique, they all share some similar qualities. First, they like to achieve success from a challenging task. The difficulty is, what is challenging to one student is not always challenging to the next student, and too challenging for a third student. All students learn better when they are connected with the content. However, not all students will connect to the same content and do not connect in the same way. Finally, students like to fit into the learning process. They learn more effectively or efficiently when we allow them to utilize their strengths to learn content. If they can fit into the learning process, they are more likely to connect to the content and be successful. Rather than ignoring these unique characteristics, differentiated instruction asks you to embrace this uniqueness. Through this course, you will become more accustomed to flexible teaching approaches, develop a more solid curriculum, learn how to develop more dynamic and learning environments. In summary, differentiated instruction is rigorous, relevant, flexible, varied, and complex. Now, the first four ideas we discussed on the previous slide, but the last one, complexity, has to be understood before moving forward. There are a lot of teachers, schools, and districts who like to claim they implement differentiated instruction when really they are not. For example, Accelerated reader alone is not an example of differentiated instruction. Learning centers where students complete the same activities at the same level is not an example of differentiated instruction. And giving students more work to do is definitely not an example of differentiated instruction. To be skilled at this approach, it takes time, reflection, and revision. Like all good teaching, it is a skill that you have to develop and practice. At the end of our course, I do not expect you to be completely skilled at the differentiated approach. However, I do expect you to have a solid idea of what it is to be comfortable with a few tools, I expect you to know what it is and to be comfortable with a few tools that you can implement to get started. I hope you will take the lessons of this course and begin to practice them. Contact me this time next year and tell me about your growth in creating a differentiated learning environment. So, now that we have been introduced to the theoretical perspective of differentiated instruction, my question to you is this: what are the traits of effective differentiated instruction? Now, of course, it is learner-centered. This is a major component of any effective classroom. However, as you move through this course and conduct your research, I want you to ask yourself, what does learner-centered mean? Is it allowing students to learn whatever they want? Is it allowing students to be in total control? I will post a few questions throughout the course to discuss this point. However, I think it's important for you to gain an understanding of what learner-centered means. Flexible teaching and learning groups is based on our knowledge that students learn at different rates and respond to instruction in different ways. In addition, I messed up. The next trait is that it is planned proactively. There are steps that you can take to plan for student differences prior to instruction based on formative and summative assessment data. In addition, you should create learner profiles to help your planning. This is something we will discuss next week. Flexible teaching and learning groups is based on our knowledge that students learn at different rates and respond to instruction in different ways. In addition, they all have different interests. All of these factors will determine an individual student's instructional level. The difficult aspect is that these factors will influence a student's instructional level from unit to unit, class to class, and sometimes lesson to lesson. As such, a grouping that works for one instructional unit really might not work for the next. The next idea is that materials and resources should be varied according to the medium, learner needs, and learning goals. The expert teacher acknowledges learner differences by providing reading materials at varying levels and complexity and addresses the same ideas or topics and ensure that all students have access to core ideas. Finally, the pace of instruction should increase or decrease in response to students' interactions with the curriculum. This seems counter to the idea of proactive planning, but it actually supports the idea. If you have proactively planned and created a learning environment that allows for this level of flexibility, you will be able to vary the pace. Now, as previously stated, creating a differentiated learning environment is difficult and not something that can be perfected overnight. What you have to be willing to do is take small steps at first, reflect on your progress, and try again. It is a learning process, like learning to ride a bike. The first time you try it, you might skin your knee, but you have to reflect on your success and shortcomings, jump back on the bike, and try again. The reason why we differentiate is because not all students learn at the same rate, and not all students learn the same, and not all teachers teach the same. There are a variety of learning styles and countless interests. However, what is not often mentioned is that there are a variety of teaching styles and teaching interests. To better address these concepts, I have provided 2 resources on our website and can be found on the same page as this presentation. The first is a link to a learning style inventory. I want you to complete this. The second is a file that helps you to assess your own teaching style. I want you to complete both and respond to a discussion question about the results. I'm sure that you are all aware of the different learning and teaching styles, so I think our time is better served if we discuss your particulars in light of differentiated instruction. The teacher's role in a differentiated classroom is that of a creator of the learning environment and facilitator of learning. I cannot overemphasize the importance of your role as the creator of the learning environment. It is your job to create a classroom where students are able to access instructionally appropriate content through instructionally appropriate processes and ways that allow them to demonstrate their learned knowledge by producing individually created products. Let me repeat that. It is your job to create a classroom where students are able to access instructionally appropriate content through instructionally appropriate processes in ways that allow them to demonstrate their learned knowledge by producing individually created products. Thus, you need to provide learning opportunities that have a range of activities whereby students choose how to engage in the content. This is not to say that you can never have teacher-led discussions or that you can never be the dispenser of knowledge. However, that cannot be the dominant form of delivery. In fact, it should only be a small part. In addition to providing a range of options that promote student choice, other times you will group students and prescribe activities. These groups will be based on learning styles, interests, and/or ability groups. These are ideas that can overwhelm teachers, so please do not think that every unit you need to hit all these ideas. Rather, you should select one or two for each unit and allow students to move forward from there. Do not bite off more than you can chew. One way to make this easier is for you to collaborate with other teachers in the planning and sharing of ideas. Perhaps you can create a professional learning community with colleagues and help each other. Also, do not forget to share and seek ideas from students and families. Many times, students have wonderful ideas as to how they want to learn. By including them in the design process, it gives them deeper ownership of the learning environment. Before we move on, I want you to think about choice again. How much is too much choice? Especially if students have limited experience with this type of learning environment. I would expect the depth of choice would be more shallow at the beginning of the school year than at the end. In order for this philosophy to be successful, you have to slowly teach kids how to learn this way. So, what do we differentiate? Well, there are three areas that we typically describe when we're talking about differentiation. We differentiate content, process, and product. When we talk about differentiation with learning styles, there are three questions to ask. What content do we want the students to know? What skill processes should students master? And how will students demonstrate they met objectives? Given the different learning styles and multiple intelligences, there are countless ways to each of these three categories. For example, if teaching a unit on the Civil War, you could allow students to have a range of choices on what they want to study, from the battles and their impact on the outcome of women's roles and their impact on the outcome. There are several different processes they could choose from analyzing the battles or women's roles to justifying the importance of the battles or women's roles in the Civil War. As for the product, students could produce plays, oral presentations, walking museums, or a photo journal. Over the next 4 weeks, you will have the opportunity to work with these ideas in more depth. Just as learning styles will determine the types of differentiated activities you implement, so will teaching styles. It is important to determine your teaching style and document activities that fit into that particular style. However, it is also important to step out of your comfort zone and try new strategies. While there are no particular teaching styles that will work on a differentiated classroom, there are some that fit more closely with this particular philosophy. Teachers who are willing to allow students to discover knowledge through hands-on activities, pose questions that promote analytical thinking, and focus on application of knowledge tend to be the most successful in a differentiated environment. The key is to create an environment where students can experiment with their ideas, fail, evaluate their failures, and learn from those failures. The final aspect of today's presentation is to recognize that you need to differentiate an activity's challenge. Challenge is rigorous, relevant, and complex. By moving through Bloom's taxonomy, you can change any of these ideas and change the complexity. However, please recognize that challenge does not mean more work. This is an area where many teachers often fall down and fail to meet the philosophical ideas of differentiation. We believe that challenging is sometimes just giving students more work, and this is not the case. As we move throughout this course and you read through Diane Hecox's book, she will accurately describe different ways to provide more complexity as a way to meet challenge or a way to introduce challenge into